Good afternoon, everyone. You're very welcome to today's webinar on smart metering. You can only manage what you measure. My name is Kathleen O'Regan. I work in the Sustainability Solutions Department of Enterprise Ireland. Please note that today's webinar is being recorded and we will share the recording and the slides afterwards. So we'll have time at the end for Q&A. So if you have any questions, just pop them into the chat and we'll hopefully come to them at the end. So today's webinar will provide insights into how installing smart meters can facilitate detailed energy and water consumption tracking and monitoring. And you will hear how investing in metering technologies is helping companies to run more efficient operations and make more informed investment decisions. We are delighted to host today's webinar on smart metering in collaboration with DCS Group. So DCS Group are a leading energy and sustainability services company delivering strategies and technologies to help organizations optimize their energy assets and consumption, reduce costs and meet sustainability goals. I am joined today by Caroline Sugrue, who is a chartered director with over 20 years experience in energy and sustainability services and consultancy. And Caroline has worked with many clients to achieve ISO 50001 and ISO 14001, and has also worked with clients to prepare sustainability reports, particularly in the field of data collection and initiative generation. We are also joined by two Enterprise Ireland client companies. We have with us Donal Budds, who is energy engineering manager with Free Foam Building Products, who are the leading manufacturer of a wide range of innovative UPVC, fascia and soffit products. And we're also joined by John Murphy, operations manager in Lee Strand. So Lee Strand is a cooperative society producing the highest quality milk, supporting the community and protecting the environment. So Caroline, I'd like to hand over to you and I'll come back in at the end for any Q&A.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. I'm just going to share my screen here, so if you bear with me. So I hope you can all see my screen.
Yep, that's perfect.
Okay. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. As Kathleen said, my name is Caroline Sugrue and I work with DCS Group, and we're an energy and engineering company. We've been in business for over 20 years, so we have a lot of experience in metering projects and a lot of different types of energy projects. And so we're here today, I suppose, just to talk about metering and monitoring and the benefits of it. So we might just start by, why should your organisation install metering in the first instance? And I suppose the first point to say there is that it's very difficult to carry out targeted actions and achieve results without the visibility of data, and you can only manage what you measure. So, typically a lot of clients are getting their consumption data from billing, and this makes it very difficult to see, what's the profile of their usage over a 24-hour period, over a 7-day period, over a 5-day period, and, seeing what's being left on at night, what's being left on at the weekends. And you can't get that kind of information from looking at bills. And I suppose the other thing about billing as well is that you're always looking back retrospectively over the last 2 months or over the last month, and the data is out of date. The second reason I would say is about quantifying savings. So we would see clients who are, they're trying to do their bit for the environment. Energy costs are rising, so they're trying to become more efficient. And maybe they're, doing an LED retrofit project, but again, they can't quantify the savings accurately from those energy initiatives they've carried out. They can't quantify it from billing. It might be, a timing issue where you've changed out your lights in August or September, but then you're moving into the, the autumn and the lighting season again. So it's very difficult to do that when it comes to billing. Maintenance alerts, we can see from the level of detail that we can get from metering, max current, power factor, that kind of information, that it can alert the engineering department to machinery. They might if you've got a piece of equipment or production line that has been sub-metered, you can see maybe a trend where the consumption in that particular machine is starting to increase, and that might alert the maintenance team to maybe worn bearings, something like that, and you can have a look at it. and you know, maybe carry out a maintenance plan on it. Correctly sizing solar PV and heat pumps. I think this is one of the areas that we see quite a lot, where metering is very, very valuable. You know, when you get your electricity bills, if you're on a night and a day rate, the day typically is from 8 o'clock in the morning to 12 o'clock at night. And if you were to base your solar size on that load, you know, you could be missing a trick there. You could be missing, and we'll see in a further slide down where I give an example of a company where they're carrying out production during the night and into the morning, and because they had metering in, they were able to correctly size their solar. And I suppose the other side of putting in metering before the solar is, if you see that there's opportunities for improvement to get your load down to be in an optimum state for your load, you can then, you know, reduce your load, and that will also have an impact on the size of the solar that you install. Allocating costs against different production lines. So if you have a lot of production streams in your business, you know, you can sub-meter those production lines, those production streams, and they will give you, you know, I suppose, valuable information about the costs associated with each of those streams. And look, the more information that you have, the better the data you have, the better the decisions you can make. And data then instantly available for sustainability and ESG reports. I'm sure a lot of the companies that are on this webinar today, you know, might be falling into scope of CSRD. And there is becoming, you know, it's becoming more of a regulatory requirement on companies now to report on how they're performing environmentally, how they're performing from a sustainability perspective. And indeed, a lot of your customers will be requesting that information of you as well. So it can be quite complex and time consuming to collate all that data from billing. But if you have a kind of a good metering system in place, if you're measuring your electricity, your gas, your water, you know, you've got that information on your fingertips. And as I've mentioned already, if you do carry out energy initiatives, you know, you can see instantly as well the savings that you've made, and you can promote those savings in your reports. So just move on to this slide here. So look, this is just a typical, we'll say, factory, and all the different incoming water, gas, power and heating. You'll have your office, you'll have your effluent, your wastewater, and then you might have, you know, solar installed as well. You'll have your power from that. You might have a lot of different machines and production streams. And all this information, you know, is coming into your facility and your site, and that's very difficult to manage all that information, and it's difficult to collate. So having a comprehensive metering system in place is just very helpful, and it gives you a lot of information. And if you have, you know, through the software system as well, you can also collate any your CO2 footprint that goes with all of that utility usage. So on this slide, we just have a sample of the kind of, I suppose, outputs that you can get from the software, because if you're putting in metering, obviously you have to see that data. So, you know, you will be looking at a software platform. So these are all the different utilities that this client has here, this particular example. And that information then can come on a monthly basis, an annual basis. You can drill down into the weekly, and you can drill down into daily, and you can also drill down into, you know, obviously a 24-hour period. And we can even see in this example here where we have the dips here, and this is the weekend profile. So we've got a weekly profile here showing the consumption of electricity over the week. So, you know, now we can start getting good detail of what's happening, and we can measure and see what's going on at the weekends and at night time. So in this slide here, I'm, you know, just showing a kind of an example of where we have sub-metered the electricity on a site. And when we sub-meter the electricity, we get what we call an energy balance. And in this pie chart, we can instantly see what the significant energy users are on this site in the different colors. So it'll tell us what machines we're using, if there's refrigeration, if it's lighting. And I suppose in this example here, we have a very thin little sliver here, and this actually highlights just general power in an office. And we can tell from that information, well, look, that's very insignificant in our overall consumption. So maybe we don't really have to be measuring that. And that there's an opportunity for us then to move that meter maybe somewhere else in the plant, and add it as a sub-meter to an area that is a significant energy user, and we can get even more information on that. This slide here just demonstrates refrigeration from one of our clients, where when they put in the metering, they were able to make some changes to controls and temperature sets, and you can see the reduction that was made over a number of months when they just made changes. And this is just purely, I suppose, from the information that they got from the metering. They didn't have to, you know, outlay any more capital. This was just behavioral changes, changing temperature sets, that kind of thing. So that was one, you know, there's a lot of savings to be made there. It was 50% saving in that particular example. And again, like, we can sub-meter our electricity, we can sub-meter our gas. So this example that I'm showing here is of a hotel that are significant energy users, significant gas users. And we can see here from this pie chart, which is their energy balance for gas, we can see that their leisure centre is their significant energy user of gas. The heating that's on in the main hotel is number 2, and we can see that actually number 3 that's using a lot of gas is to heat the hot water in the bedrooms. So I like this pie chart because it gives you an instant representation, a visualization of what's going on from a gas perspective in your plant, your facility, your hotel. And it can also be represented in a bar chart. I suppose the bar chart has the figures with it. It gives the consumption kilowatt hours, and it gives the date. And we can see here where, you know, this is early March into April. We can see up here where we can see that the grey is the gas that was used to heat the main hotel. We can see how the profile of that reduces as we move into the summer months. The requirement for heating has been reduced. So this is where we're metering our water. And sometimes people forget about, you know, metering their water, but, you know, water usage can be very costly. And I suppose the big benefit of having a meter on your water is the very early detection, because this meter, this information is coming at 15-minute intervals. It's the early detection of a leak. And the sooner you grapple with the leak, the better, because obviously we're wasting resources, number 1, but number 2, it can be a costly, it can be very costly if we don't, you know, get to it in a timely manner. And also then we can measure our effluent going out. And I see where county councils now are auditing clients that have effluent licenses. So when you are measuring your water in and your effluent out, you want those figures to be obviously as close as possible, because if there's a discrepancy, if there's a big discrepancy, it indicates either, you know, a leak coming in or a leak going out, and you don't want that. So this is the slide that I was alluding to earlier, where this is an example of a client where their production starts early in the morning, starts around 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and then actually peters out as the day goes on. So because we had installed metering and we were able to see what the profile of their usage was over a 24-hour period, we were able to help them in correctly sizing their solar. Because there, you know, there wouldn't be much point in having solar, you know, higher, because we thought maybe the load was coming down here as well, you know, after the 2 o'clock. And I suppose the other thing to mention as well is that more and more people now are installing solar in their businesses, and the utility providers, you know, the rate that you're getting for selling back to the grid is reducing. So I think, you know, while it might have been, you know, maybe some people might have looked at it as a kind of an income stream in the past, you know, I think people should consider that. And I think maybe correctly sizing your solar to your load is probably a better decision, because if you don't, you know, your return on investment might kind of push out a couple of years. So I think correctly sizing that, you know, can save you 10 or 20%, up to 20% in your actual capital outlay on your solar panels. So I think that's something really to bear in mind. But again, that information, you know, only becomes available if you have metering in place. So I just put in these slides here because I suppose, you know, when you put in metering, there's lots of different things that you can do and information you can garner. And if you're in a business that has different shifts, you can break them into night shift, day shift. You might have 3 shifts in operation. And if all 3 shifts are performing the same function, you know, maybe one shift is performing better than another shift from a consumption point of view. And, you know, it might just throw up the question, why is that? So there might be learnings from something like that if one shift is performing better than another. So just to say that you know, there's lots of different logical groups that you can put together from a software perspective. And that can be very customer focused, and it can be, you know, bespoke to different customers and different businesses. So I suppose this slide is for all the engineers and all the technicians out there, as well as just getting general consumption, you know, from your electricity bills and your gas bills and water consumption. You can also, you know, get information, which I think is very useful to engineering departments and maintenance departments, and that's your power factor, your harmonics, your, you know, maximum demand, which obviously feeds into your maximum import capacity, your maximum current. So that's, you know, the engineering department can get a lot of useful information and valuable information out of that. And again, that all comes from your metering. And I suppose sometimes we see companies where they require this kind of level of information because, you know, from a maintenance perspective, and sometimes it can be costly to get a meter in just to see this information from a third party. But if you have metering installed, you know, anyway, this is just an added benefit that you can get more information and data. So now I might just ask maybe John if he'd like to have join the conversation. And we've worked with Lee Strand and John in a metering project. And John, if I might just maybe start by asking you, I suppose, why did Lee Strand maybe consider installing solar? You know, what data or benefits or information did they get from it, and did it lead to any changes in the organisation and in the plant? Thanks, John.
Hi, Caroline. Thanks. I suppose, look, we looked at probably the energy monitoring project because look, we had people going around here. I suppose we knew we are a big user of energy. I suppose first of all, we do consume a lot of energy, and look, we were manually monitoring, I suppose, electricity meters, gas meters, water meters and stuff like that. And it's, you know, we were doing that on a daily basis, but it just gave us an overall view of what we were using. So we were very interested really in the whole sub-metering aspect of it to find out what exactly in the plant or in the factory and inside the gates here we're using the energy. And I suppose the load profile of it when it was being used during the day was very important to us as well. Because I suppose, as you mentioned earlier on, we were looking at a solar PV project as well, and we wanted to ensure that we size that solar PV project correctly, because we don't have production here on a Sunday and a Monday, and we really didn't see a whole lot of, now while we don't have actual production taking place, we'd still have a lot of refrigeration equipment and different things running, which would be still using a considerable amount of electricity. But we wanted to size our solar, I suppose, installation correctly, that we'd use, even on those days we don't have production, that we still use the vast majority of what we produce here ourselves, rather than trying to send it back out to the grid.
Mm-hmm.
So I suppose that was one thing. Obviously, I suppose we're also looking at ways that we can reduce our carbon footprint here while saving ourselves money and reduce our impact, I suppose, in the environment. So I suppose they were the kind of key considerations. They were the reasons we decided that we needed a bit more granular data to look at what within the plant or what within here was actually using the energy, and between across the day was it using it, I suppose.
Mhm. And I suppose when the metering was set up then, and I know you did quite a comprehensive project there, John, and you did a lot of sub-metering, were you surprised at some of the information, the data that you got from it, from a kind of a consumption perspective on different pieces of equipment or cold rooms or refrigeration? Did any of that surprise you?
Look, I suppose, look, we probably had a good handle on, look, what were the main uses of electricity in here. But again, I suppose, look, there was some surprises there. We did see different things, and maybe it was the times during the day that things were running, and maybe it was maybe as well some electricity that was being consumed when we'd have expected it being much lower and everything to be switched off and stuff like that. So look, there was different little tweaks that we were able to make probably nearly immediately that reduced our energy consumption or electricity consumption, I suppose, in particular. Kind of had a big impact on that. And as I said, we had the data from the sub-meters, and I think, like you showed there in a slide earlier on, that if there's somewhere that when you look at that pie chart, if it's something that's having very little impact in the big picture, it's only a small sliver of the pie chart, maybe you can decide to move that meter onto something else if you want to particularly focus in on something. And I suppose, look, there was some different adjustments in the plant and some piece of equipment that surprised us, and we did make adjustment now to the way we were running the homogenizer, even, for instance, and it did reduce the amount of electricity that it was consuming. And, like, I suppose we wouldn't have picked that up only for the fact that we had sub-meters on it, and I suppose it also had the added benefit of actually reducing the noise that was coming from the homogenizer, which is situated below in the middle of the production floor.
So it's just a kind of an added benefit that happened as a result of,
Yeah.
because I think we did an exercise, John, when for the last 3 months of 2024, when, after having kind of, I suppose, given the metering time to settle down, and following kind of some tweaks, like you said, that you did, I think for the last 3 months of 2024, I think there was like a 12% reduction on your electrical consumption just by making those few changes.
That's right, Caroline. Look, we achieved a 12% reduction there, as you said, pretty quickly, and it was without any other further capital outlay on that. And I suppose, look, we've kind of put a group of people together here now, kind of an energy committee formed, and we all have access there to, we can log in whenever we want ourselves, and we can drill down into the data to look at it, and as I said, we kind of meet up there on a regular basis then, and just further probably over time, when we drill down more and maybe have focus on different things, I'm sure that there's probably further energy savings there to be made as well.
Okay, John, thanks for that. Donal, I might ask you to join us now. Thank you. And I suppose maybe if I just ask the same general questions that I asked John, I suppose what kind of, I suppose, why did Freeco kind of maybe consider metering in the first place? What kind of information did you get? Were you surprised at it? And what changes, if any, did that lead you to carry out?
Thanks, Caroline. You can hear me okay, yeah?
Yeah. Okay,
so I suppose Freeform Building Products, they're a very, let's say, energy efficient driven type company. It's something that when I joined the company, 7 years ago, once I got my feet under the table, the mandate was to try and figure out how we can reduce our energy costs, but also then reduce our carbon footprint. So we are a company that's very much driven like that, and we needed to understand, what we need to do. So we saw some initiatives that we could do, and we started working on this. But as we were working on it, let's say we were changing out the lighting system, going to LED. As we were doing that, we realized, well, we don't really understand how much we're saving on this. There's no hard data on that. And it kind of emanated from that, because we don't have a static, let's say, electricity bill because of the amount of equipment we use here. We could be using 10 machines one day, the next day we could be using 4 machines. It depends on our demand. So that kind of drove us to asking the question, how can we individualize this? And that's when we met up with DCS Group. And from that point on, we we had loads of ideas of how we could save money, but we didn't know, what is the best way to measure this. So we went through the metering system, and we got the system in. I think we had 30 units in the plant. And so it was very good from that point of view. There's so many sub-meters going on that we could individualize machines. And then inside in the machine, we could actually individualize subsystems inside in that, just to understand what's going on. So it drove, let's say, we did a lot of, let's say, main motor changes. We did a complete entourage of changes because we knew each investment we were doing, we were going to get a payback. But we did this in a kind of a little bit more of a structured way. We'd pilot one scheme and we'd see what the payback would be, not in a theoretical sense, but in an actual sense. And from that, it gave us the confidence to do more and more and more. And we have a very tight regime of, what the payback should be. So like I was saying, we changed over motors. We have, let's say, vacuum systems that are in our plant, and they gave us, by changing those vacuum systems out to a low energy vacuum system, we were probably able to reduce that subsystem by about 10%, in terms of energy cost and energy savings. So like things went, keep going on better and better. And like John, we had let's say we set up an energy team, and the energy team was cross-departmental. So like engineering would be one part of it, maintenance would be another part. We'd have a person up in the offices. So we even, from the point of view, people then looked after their own kind of area. And just as a typical example, we were looking at the consumption in the offices, and we noticed that at the weekends, our offices were like consuming, I think, about 400 kilowatt hours of electricity. And we said, okay, this sounds a bit high because there's nobody in the office. So with DCS Group, we kind of decided what we would do if we created an event. So everybody got together in the office, and we said we'd turn off anything we don't need in the office, and and bring that culture in. And just by doing that, we dropped it down to 170 kilowatt hours, for per day, which is an incredible, it's not a huge amount of electricity, but it's a hell of an achievement to be able to do that. So it kept, underpinning the culture in the company to, ensure that all the time how we can do, energy saving. And also, like, from the point of view of our requirements, we have some customers that require us to measure our carbon footprint. So now we have a baseline, and we're constantly, and also the requirement to keep reducing our carbon footprint year on year. So from that point of view, we had a baseline to start from, and with constant initiatives, then we were able to, have set goals for ourselves and then try and reach those goals.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Donal. And I think that point that you make about creating a baseline is an important one to make. And I suppose if there's people, on this webinar, and maybe they're only starting out on their, their energy reduction sustainability journey, I think it's very advisable to put in metering in advance of any of those changes, because having the metering installed really is key and cornerstone to quantifying the savings that you make. And especially when we're in a climate now where, reporting on your environmental sustainability importance or performance is so important. It is really important to be able to accurately calculate, all the good work you're doing, the savings that you're making. And I suppose I just wanted to just highlight as well here in this slide here, this is from this is Freefoam. And Donal, as you mentioned, you have a very complex process there in Freefoam. There was a lot of meters went in there, and you've lots of production streams, and we were able to put them into different
Hello, we seem to have lost Caroline there. We'll just give Caroline a moment to see if she can come back.
Is the presentation there?
Yeah, so we're
Kathleen?
just online now at the moment, but if you want to continue on there, Donal, this is Caroline's colleague Donal, who's just joined us. Unfortunately, we've lost Caroline, but Caroline was just
She'll
finishing
probably
off
be
there.
back.
Yeah, Caroline was just finishing off there, I think,
Yeah.
on just the second case study with Freeform.
You don't have a copy of the presentation there? I can't. I don't have it
Yeah,
there.
well, I think we were on the last slide anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I suppose in summary, and I suppose just to thank John and Donal there regarding the overall experience that they've had with us, and it's an ongoing experience, obviously. So that's one of the things, I suppose, where Caroline's really kind of coming through with the whole, we work in partnership with companies from the start to the finish, because so it's a really kind of energy management and energy products and new technology. They're being thrown at people left, right, and center at the moment. And I suppose we're 20 years at this type of thing. So by having metering and having by measurement and having taken it step by step, rather than jumping into a big solar project or jumping into a big heat project, or having your ducks lined up as such is really, really important for people. And I suppose the other thing I think that I think is really important to say in this webinar as well is that Enterprise Ireland have been a fantastic support for metering and measurement, and in terms of your understanding of the importance of it, but also supporting companies that can avail of the grant aid that's there, that really gets people into kind of a good place in terms of understanding their investments, because these investments aren't small. These investments can be €500,000. You really want to make sure you're getting return for your investment, and understanding that heat pump people or solar panel people, they want to sell you their products. So we're kind of a little bit, we implement the projects by all means from start to finish, but we're a little bit of a guardrail against people overselling their, having too much solar or having too much heat pumps, or whichever, or what's feasible in terms of investment and everything else.
No, absolutely. Thanks, Donal. And I'm actually at a water and wastewater event today, so it's very much topic of conversation, even just in terms of companies better understanding their data with water and wastewater. And we see the increase in charges coming in now, with water, wastewater, with trade effluent. So I think it's really key, I suppose, for companies to better understand their inflows and outflows on the water, wastewater, trade effluent side, as well as kind of the energy, the electricity, and the fuel. Donal, do you want to come in there? I see you just have your hand up.
Yeah, just to kind of confirm what Donald is saying there, which is, I think, probably one of the main successes for our metering system here, is the fact that we're working with DCS. It is a partnership, and it's not like they don't railroad anything down there. It's just that we look at, let's say, what we think is a good idea, and I would call Donald and he would say, okay, let's have a look through this, and we get really good advice. So, and the other thing which Caroline was saying earlier is just, let's say, understanding what's your energy profile. Like, we have pretty good measurement now. We've been probably nearly 2 years, I think, metering, and we're at the point where we're going to embark on a solar PV plant here, and with the support of Donal and DCS, this is good. Like, for us, this is an investment that we have confidence in, rather than somebody trying to sell us solar PV. So from that point of view, I think it's really good, and we have never looked back since we started doing this. It's been really good exercise for us.
No, and that's fantastic to hear, and it's great to have, I suppose, two companies from two different sectors on today, in terms of say Freeform and the co-op as well. John, would you like to come in there?
Sorry, yeah, look, I was just going to kind of re-emphasize something there that Donald said as well, I suppose, in terms of the, the grant aid available from Enterprise Ireland for this energy monitoring project that we carried out. That was, it was 50%, we were able to avail of a 50% grant from Enterprise Ireland on it, which was brilliant for us,
And I suppose some companies might know what meters to get or where to put them. So companies can get support even developing a metering roadmap, whether it's under the Climate Action Voucher to develop a metering roadmap or Green Start, to to take that step back and identify what meters to get. And then, as you mentioned, both have mentioned the energy metering and tracking grant, which is 50% grant. So it includes the cost of obviously the hardware, the meters, whether that be electricity or fuel or water or steam, loggers, the installation and commissioning costs. The total project cost is typically up to 100,000, but it's a minimum of 10,000 because we're supporting a range of companies from SMEs to large companies here. And some companies are actually looking at submitting, a second application because they're looking at putting in more meters. So it's just to, so the supports are there, and as we're very keen to help companies, install more meters and have better data. Now I suppose what goes with the meters then, and I see we just have a question in the chat. We've one question in, so if anyone else has more questions, please put them in now because we've time to answer any questions from our audience. But what goes with the meters then, I suppose, is the software platforms. Now there's no grant supports for the actual software platforms for monitoring and tracking, because this is generally license fee, whether it's monthly or annual, and it's a continuous I suppose license fee there that's required. So there isn't actually a grant support for that. On our directory of green service providers, we do provide a list of software platform providers just to help companies select a software platform, because there's different ones out there. But have you any advice here? I suppose I'll throw it out to anyone here to jump in if you have any advice on kind of software platforms.
Yeah, there are quite a few. There are quite a few there, Kathleen, and again, it varies. But I suppose the biggest challenge you're going to have really with metering is because your logistics and infrastructure within factories can be quite challenging. So I suppose we've been doing this for 20 years now. So I suppose there's a number of vendors out there, and you obviously go to a tender process and all the rest of it with the metering, but pretty much most stuff now, most equipment can feed into kind of pretty open protocol kind of platforms. We have one, for example, but there are multiple other ones, kind of thing. And again, I suppose I'd be saying our one's great because it's simple. Because that's one of the things we started when we started the whole process. It's how to keep it simple. It's not too. It can be very engineering oriented, but it also needs to be simple, because otherwise people won't want to look at it. So there are multiple types out there of platforms, but again, I suppose getting your metering mix right is the key thing there, and again, having multiple types, and there's again lots and lots of different meters out there, but again, it's getting the right mix, because it might be practical to dig up half your backyard to get metering into the water meter or the effluent, which might predominantly could be the other side of the factory versus your electrical input or whatever,
Yeah.
So we've been able to work with a number of Irish companies actually that have been in this space for the last 20 years. So again, we're wide open to people asking. We can give advice and that kind of, there's lots of different really good Irish companies at the moment,
Yeah. So it's kind of just taking that step back at the beginning and looking at the different options. Like we'd always advise, even when it's whether it's for consultancy or training or capital support, it's about reaching out, to at least 3 providers and kind of taking a step back and seeing what's the best option for you. So we have another question in there now, and it's from Brian. So once you have a baseline and understand your energy profile, what process do you go through to engage energy suppliers or brokers to ensure the best tariff is obtained? Is there transparency in the process? So
On
energy suppliers.
Energy suppliers.
Yeah.
That's a tricky one. I suppose the energy suppliers want to sell you energy. They don't want to save you energy. That's the first thing, and that's the bottom. That's what they are. In terms of their tariffs and in terms of their charges, they all vary based on what's happening in the hedge markets, predominantly across the world, kind of thing, you know, and it varies depending on who's bought what or future payments of energy consumption over whatever period of time. So I would be inclined to say, right, and again, it's a little bit like, you know, getting your balance, let's say where you are at the moment, and then I would just be simple as shopping around with the key kind of players, kind of thing, you know, giving them your energy data and your profile, because again, wintertime, summertime, daytime, nighttime, they all vary, and they all vary quite a lot. But if you're armed with something saying, yeah, well, I use 10% of my energy at nighttime, well, predominantly you want to be on the daytime rate, then, or competitive daytime rate rather than a competitive nighttime rate, which can look very good based on your the suppliers kind of um, you know, they're in the business of selling you their uh, I suppose their units, let's say, as such, you know, loaded up with all the duos, tuos, and all the other charges that goes with it, which is quite confusing as well.
Yeah.
But at least if you've got your energy kind of data, and for with your water and everything else, at least you've somewhere to stand in terms of, you know, what's the best fit for you, and to challenge them with that whole thing, you know.
I'm muting myself, so apologies for the background noise. I'm at an event today. But reviewing those, you know, that annually as well,
Yeah.
and yeah, comparing. There's another question in there. So around sub-metering, is sub-metering a 1 to 2 year project, or would you keep sub-metering installed indefinitely?
Or keep it indefinitely.
Yeah.
It's really important. As Karen said earlier, we had a project in Cork recently, or going back a bit, and it was metering water, and the water, there was a leak in the water, and the council were countercharging the company for uh, additional usage. But we put in the metering, they found the leak straight away, and they knew they shouldn't be using that amount of water, so they're to go back and get a credit against it. So, like, having metering there all the time, you'd be amazed how much you'll save. You might, by revisiting your energy metering or energy consumption, you'll be amazed how quickly you can, you know, fall out of good habits and go back into bad habits because the day job kicks off, or whatever production or whatever's going on. But by revisiting it all the time, you can sustain kind of a 10% saving overall on a year in, year out kind of thing. So it just gives you something to address and to be able to deal with on an ongoing basis as a company. So it's I again, I suppose with the Enterprise Ireland supports, with the initial kind of energy efficiency measures, accelerated capital allowances, your return on investment on metering projects can be under 12 months quite easily. So by just having it paid for within 12 months, it's just generating savings through anyway thereafter, you know. So it's not like something you're waiting for a 10-year return on investment on. So you might as well keep it, and generally the platforms are relatively cheap in terms of recurring revenue, and that will easily pay for itself on an annual basis anyway, based on returns you're getting on energy efficiency.
No, that's great. Now, we don't actually have any more questions coming in. So I'm going to just share my slides now in a moment, and just kind of touch on the supports that we've discussed. But yeah, just to thank Donal and Caroline, and also John, and two Donals actually for joining us today. And thanks for sharing your insights. I think it's really valuable for companies, because I think a lot of companies are at that stage where they you know, that they need to better understand their energy, their water usage, and meters is kind of the way to do that, and putting a monitoring system in place. But it doesn't have to be complex, and there's support there, look, I suppose, to help companies do this. So I'll just share my screen now, just to give it 2 seconds, and slide just take a minute to move. My slides might move in a minute, but basically just to say that we do have a range of supports to help companies. some of the initial kind of starter supports are the Sustainability Kickstarter workshop. We've one more of those coming up, and it's actually Friday the 6th. So if you're an SME and you're thinking about your sustainability plan and what does sustainability mean to your business, it's free for SMEs to sign up to. So you can go onto our website and register for that. We will be hosting more later on in the year, but we just have one between now and the summer. And then we have our Sustainability Leadership Programme, which is a more in-depth kind of programme to develop a sustainability charter for our company, identify the priority areas to focus on, and develop a plan around that. And then we have our individual grant support. So the Climate Action Voucher, it's a 2-day fully funded support. It can be developed to develop an initial action plan. So that could be a sustainability plan, a decarbonisation plan, a metering plan, as I mentioned earlier, or a circular economy action plan. And then we've Green Start, which is typically up to 7 days, a minimum of 3 days. It's 80% funded, but companies are getting help with, you know, developing their metering plan, putting in maybe a basic management system, understanding their carbon footprint, establishing kind of KPIs and targets. So getting advice and guidance on all these activities. And then we have Green Plus, which is our training grant. And typically companies there are aligning to, you know, international standards such as ISO 50001 if it comes to energy, or the Alliance for Water Stewardship standards. Companies were focusing on energy, but we do see more of a focus now on water. And as you're obviously, you know, pumping or treating water, you're using energy. So they, you know, they go hand in hand. And then we have our capital supports then to help companies, whether it's, you know, around energy or kind of water efficiency. So I suppose, look, my slides aren't moving there now, but if you know, if you're interested in any of the supports, reach out to your client advisor, or you can reach out to green@enterprise-ireland.com. And I'd just like to thank the two Donalds, John and Caroline, today for joining us. So thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Kathleen, I don't know if you can hear me.
We can, Caroline.
My sincerest apologies. Gremlins just came into my laptop and it just completely shut down. I am so sorry about that, but I hope I was covered most of what I wanted to say anyway. Thank God Donal was there to jump in.
Exactly. No, not at all.
Apologies.
Not at all. Donal was able to step in there. So look, thanks very much, Caroline.
Okay, thanks, Kathleen. Thanks
everyone. Bye.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Bye. Bye.